There are a lot of lonely students out there. Not alone, lonely. And I think
it's not discussed enough how tough it is going from, your solidified friend group in high school, then you're just thrown into this whole new pool of new people.
I've met like some of like my best friends in the weirdest ways. I was at Target once shopping, and the worker there, we just started chatting, and then we ended up being like, we're like best friends now.
Freshman year, there's this huge mass of people in the first week of school walking to get boba in Chinatown, and I don't know what's going on. I've never had boba before. My girlfriend was in that group.
What? Juggling classes, making friends, studying tips, saving money. We're talking about all things college and giving you advice with real college students. Featuring today's hosts, Carlynn Greene, James So, and JC Rodriguez. Welcome to the Campus Underground podcast. Sit back, relax, and learn new hacks.
Hey guys, I'm James. Welcome to the Campus Underground podcast. I'm here with Carlynn, JC, Ben, Kenny, and Jacob. And today we're going to be talking about relationships, why they're important, and how they can have an impact on us in college. So relationships in college is pretty important. And so I just wanted to open up to all of you guys. How have relationships impacted you in college?
I feel like a lot of how I feel and the people and like the way I act is the people I'm around. So like the relationships I've made are super important, whether that be for the clubs and activities that I ended up getting involved in the school, or the opportunities that I had off campus, or even jobs and internships and networking purposes. I feel like the relationships that I made during college definitely defined that experience.
With making friends, honestly, I would say go with the flow, because maybe they stop you one day and they're like, oh, you're pretty cool. I had you were in one of my classes, and I really think we should start hanging out or something like that. If there's a connection there, go for it, because any connection is a good connection, because they could be someone that you might want to get in contact with in the future. So
now that I think about it, a lot of the friendships that I made during college were as a result of another friend. So when I came into college, I was roommates with someone I had known since middle school throughout marching band and all that. And so she's a lot more sociable than me. And she would introduce me to her friends, and then we just created a friend group from there. But other ways to, I guess, make friends, just be sociable in person, even if you're kind of like antisocial or have social anxiety like I do. So one thing I like to do is just intentionally wearing shirts that represent things that I like. So I like anime, I like Marvel, I like all that type of stuff. So when I wear those type of shirts, people come up to me and say, hey, you like that? I like that too. And then we start a conversation, maybe follow each other on social media, and then we go from there. So that's how I go about that as an introvert.
Yeah, I've definitely done that as well, so I understand. And it definitely works if you do that.
I think it's also a lot about the 5-person rule, like the 5 people that you're around the most, you become. And I think in college especially, you can kind of pick and choose who you're around, which is the best part of it all. Like, you just go off of chemistry, and those who you vibe with really well, you spend more time around, and therefore it's kind of like a growth thing. You kind of all grow together, which is really fun.
And then just talking about a starting point for beginning those relationships, I started my first college experience after a 2-year hiatus from school. So when I went back to my college, so many people, I didn't know where to start. So I just began with the people who were naturally in my environment. So those who were in my classes already, people who were sharing my major. I just joined a business fraternity because I was in the business school. And that was a good just starting point for anyone who's kind of confused or intimidated with like just approaching a new group of homies. Just start with those around you.
Do you guys feel like these relationships you've had changed the quality of life in college?
Extremely. The people you surround yourself with and the people that you spend your most time with are going to have the most influence on you. And if they're not treating you well, and if they're disrespecting you or making you feel bad, you're going to feel bad every day. Because those are the people, that's what your interactions are. I feel like, yeah, there's definitely some relationships that I can pinpoint that I'm like, my college experience would not be anything without you there. I met my girlfriend the first week of freshman year for a like orientation event on campus, and a friend of mine who I was texting her telling her how nervous I was because I didn't want to I figured everyone already made friend groups pretty much because people were already kind of grouping up, and she was like, just come with me, come get boba, it'll be fine. And she didn't tell me that it actually was an event that was put in a group chat and multiple people were going. There was about like 25 girls going, and she just told me it was an individual thing and meet her downstairs. So she dive bombed me with 19 more people to socialize with. My girlfriend was in that group. So like you never know what happens, and like it was terrifying, and I was so angry because I was like, you lied to me and you put me in this situation where I'm so uncomfortable and I don't know anything that's going on, and there's this huge mass of people in the first week of school walking to get boba in Chinatown, and I don't know what's going on. I've never had boba before. I'm not going to fit in. But like I made very, very close friends from literally that one interaction, and I never would have imagined like 3 years later I'm still close with those people.
And Kenny, I like that part you made about freshman year, because I think it's not discussed enough how tough it is going from, you know, your solidified friend group in high school, and then you're just thrown into this whole new pool of new people, new experiences, and nothing really clicks for a while. Or maybe it does with boba, but for a lot of people, nothing clicks. And it really just took time for me to, you know, find an adventurous group of people. And again, like what you spend your time doing is kind of like the person you'll become. So if you know, again, just going off of interests and whatnot, like what you spend your time doing with people will definitely dictate the quality of the friendship, the relationship, whatever it may be.
Yeah, kind of like going off of what you guys are saying. Alan Watts says if there's something you're interested in, you'll find someone else who is as well.
Yeah,
and it's
always.
like you said, like we're all humans, we're all different, we're all not going to get along.
Yeah.
So it's like trying to find that group of people that, you know, you relate to, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think community is so important, and to me, community is the most important thing. I think like I excel, I'm happy, I just grow so much more when I'm around people. Like, for example, like Ben, like if I told you to move this couch into the other room by yourself, it's probably really hard, but if I had all three of you do it, it'd be so easy. With that, I think there's power in finding like a like-minded group of people to help like grow together with. You guys talk a lot about like, you know, how important it is and stuff. Like, do you guys have any like tips or advice on like, because kind of like what you're saying too with social anxiety, like it's really hard for people to just go out of their way to like talk to people. It's really hard. And so what are some perspectives or tips from you guys of like how to make friends and find those relationships?
Well, I would say in terms of like sustaining those friendships and relationships, it really helps to have like a group chat. We actually have like several different segments of our group chats for my main core friend group. And so like when we're on TikTok or Twitter, whatever social media platform, we just send each other funny memes, funny posts, or even things that we think the other person can benefit from. Like if I know one person in my friend group is looking for an internship or wants to pivot into some sort of field like tech or whatever it may be, I'll send that resource their way. So we're always uplifting each other and even sending voice messages. So of course, social media can really help with sustaining relationships, friendships, and all that.
A community could be one other person. It could be two other people, and that could be the friend group. If you're that introvert that really does not get out much or is not really comfortable going and joining clubs like most people or some people, as long as you have a connection where you can go to them if you're grieving, if you're stressed out and you need relief, that could be that community that you are looking for. It doesn't have to be 10 people or 15 people, because I'm sure it looks great from the outside, but in the inside of that group, you could have, I don't want to call them haters, but you could have people that are just there to kind of drain you and try to become like you, in a sense, to make them feel better and put you down at the end. So I honestly, small groups could be the best for you. But if you are like the type to have large groups of friends and you can find genuine friends that are in just like a large group, then that's your community. Everybody has a different community.
Yeah, I also think shared experiences is number one priority, because you're getting into college and you're meeting friends and you might not be the best at socializing. Go for a run, go for a swim, go to the gym. You don't have to, talk 24/7, which is part of the thing that really bonds people is shared time. So think that's number one. But number two is also reciprocation. You know, everyone who you want to be friends with, like, shoot your shot, but also definitely give back to the people who show their interest in you as well, because at the end of the day, those are going to be the people that stick around.
And that like level of emotional intelligence, I think that comes from a lot of self-awareness, like knowing who you are, knowing,
Right.
being confident, knowing the things you like, so you don't end up in groups where, you know, they just don't have the same mindset as you.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not helpful to just be super outgoing and just like be kind of part of a lot of different friend groups, because that was me throughout college. Like, I could talk to anyone. I was really outgoing, but there's no like group that I really like had a depth of relationship with. It was probably just individuals. And so I think it's important to analyze yourself, see like what you want to do, what you want to achieve, and find a true group of people who cares about the same things.
Yeah, I was actually going to mention that. Yeah, definitely. If you're that introvert and you have social anxiety, I would definitely, so even after leaving work, that first hour outside of work and you're back in your apartment, take that mental break, just have a time of release, because sometimes when you're in a space with so many people coming up to you, okay, what's going on? How have you been? And it's just too much going on in that space. You have to leave that space. And sometimes your home, your apartment, or what have you, is that space where you can just relax. You can lay back, take that social break, because you need those too. And then you can reflect on how you're doing in your career, your classes, or internship during the summer, and you can kind of build yourself up, so then you can keep those connections and you can help build your community or your friends with you.
I think I've always been in like phases in college where like sometimes I have like really solid squad of friends and like life's great. There's times where like maybe people move away and I'm like, I feel like a lot more lonely. I think there are a lot of like lonely students out there, not alone, lonely. And I think there's a big difference, because it's hard to like focus on like school and stuff when like you just feel lonely. And so like I think there's responsibility if you have like a good group of friends. Like I feel like right now I have a really solid group of friends, and we always try our best to like go find other people and like just invite people to things and stuff like that. I've met like some of like my best friends in the weirdest ways. Like I was at Target once shopping, and the worker there was like, I don't know, we just started chatting, and then we ended up being like, we're like best friends now. And like some other friends like I've met were like just through like social media. So I feel like being intentional and like being open-minded of like, you never know like who you could, you know, be good friends with, and just always like actively seeking that out is important.
And speaking of weird ways of making friends, so a few years ago, my ex at the time, he saw me at the one of the dining halls for the college, and I had my tennis racket with me. And so he also played tennis throughout high school and everything. And so once I was at the tennis court, he followed me, actually, kind of a stalker. He followed me all the way to the tennis court, acted like it was coincidental, and then we just really hit it off. We dated for about 5 months. So that's another example of a weird way of just making a connection with someone. So reconnecting with certain physical activities that you might want to do, whether that's going to the gym or a specific sport, will open your world to more people who you can connect with.
A question I had for you guys is, school is obviously crazy, right? Like it takes so much time. So how do you guys manage and balance relationships with school?
It's hard. And I definitely do think that it's a learning process, that some people take a lot longer to learn than other people. There are people who are in my life now that I've had to be like, hi, I know that you consider us friends, but with the amount of effort you're putting into this relationship, I don't consider this a friendship, and I don't see this lasting, pretty much. Just because they've been so busy with school or their extracurriculars, or they have 20 other friends that they want to go see and they pick the same 5 every single time. It's just, I think you have to be considerate of your time and the people who are important to you and how you want to make people feel. If you overbook yourself, and even if you're trying to do the best thing possible, like, for example, like if you have a party that night, but you also have play rehearsal because you have your play that next day, like you stop at the party, go say hi to the host, take a picture, and then leave. It doesn't feel great. Like, it just feels like you were there to be there, say you were there and then leave. And that's not the intention at all. It's just like you have to think about it on other people's heads too, in terms of how they might see it and how your situation, they might not know all the details and all of the answers that you have. So.
Yeah, like a big part of it is just being present wherever you are, whichever situation. And like James was saying earlier, like there's seasons of your life where maybe your freshman year, you're not as busy, you don't have jobs or internships yet. So of course you have a lot more time to socialize. Your circle might get huge, but maybe junior, senior year, you have that boyfriend, girlfriend, you are maybe more tied up with work and other demands. And you just got to accept that season of your life. Your circle might be a little smaller. And it's not so much about, dang, I have a smaller circle of friends, but that's just how it is right now for this present moment.
Yeah, I would say in terms of balancing friendships or relationships in general with your school life, studies and all that, it helps to coordinate schedules. So like if you guys want to go to breakfast together, lunch together, or even have study sessions together, me and my friends, we would do that all the time. So that's something you can consider doing.
Yeah, I mean, like you don't need to put your life on pause just to spend time with people. You can exactly same things. Like meals are huge. Everyone's got to eat 3 meals a day, or maybe 2, maybe 1, but
you should eat 3.
Yeah. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day, but everyone's got to eat 3 meals a day. So definitely coordinating those times is great quality time to spend with people, non-distraction. There's a sauna at BC. I love spending time with people in the sauna. Again, just like no phones, just chatting, meeting strangers too, going back to that strangers point. And also just, study sessions, spending like long periods of time with people, take a little break from the studies, chat a bit, and get back to it. So
yeah, and with long distance relationships, say you're like me, you're 15 hours drive away from some of your closest friends, send that text when you have that feeling like, hi, how are you doing? Send them a TikTok or whatnot. I mean, just to keep that connection, because you already have the distance separating you. So you have to find the ways to connect with them still, and not just let them feel like they were forgotten. FaceTime them. Honestly, it doesn't have to be a weekly thing. I personally, I might FaceTime some of my friends from back home or that have moved abroad or whatnot, maybe every other month. But I mean, you're still showing the effort to keep that connection. And as long as you show that effort in person or be it through social media, I mean, if it's a good connection, it will stay. If not, then you just have to close that door.
Do you guys have any like personal experiences or thoughts on like how relationships can help you like succeed academically or even like vocationally? I don't even know if that's a word, but how do you think that can help you like with your future?
So going back to the connections, and every connection is a good connection. When you're open and you are not necessarily an open book, but you're open to being friends with just about anybody that you feel that connection with, I feel like that could lead to so many different connections. Because like you were saying earlier, oftentimes you make that friend group from the current friend or the previous friend you had recently. So one connection will lead to others.
I have an example of this. So during sophomore year, I took this 8-hour newscast class. It was exhausting, but so worth it. And one of my classmates, she was a graduate student, and we had to do this final project together, making our own original show, and it turned out amazing. And so I asked her to also be like my letter of reference, my recommendation letter for certain internships and scholarships I won. And honestly, the letter that she wrote me was even stronger than the ones my professors wrote, and really helped propel my applications and secure those scholarships and internships. So that's just an example of how relationships can leverage you professionally.
Yeah, because I do know that personal side of you. Your professor's getting that student look versus not.
It's more personal.
Yeah, exactly.
I was once in a sales training and they told me this thing called the 33% rule when it came to like time spent around people. And I hit all these different like rules and like 80-20 acronyms, stuff like that. But this one was about you spend 33% of your time with people who are more experienced than you, like mentors, 33% with people at your level, your peers, and the other 33% training those people who don't have as much experience as you. And the reason I love that is that last 33% is it's all about giving. And for any genuine relationship, like your mindset should be about how can I serve? How can I be helpful to them? Not so much what can I take from this or what am I getting out of this relationship? Because that's when you start coming off as fake.
Yeah, and it's definitely a trade-off too. Because I mean, as a friend, you have to kind of give and take it. But if they're not willing to give that same vibe back, then that kind of shows that maybe that connection might have to be
I think that's where like the awareness comes in, right? Because like you don't want to be taking advantage of anyone or vice versa, and like you don't want it to be transactional. That's always when it's disingenuine. But I think going off of what you said, like I think we're in a world where a lot of people are like bringing their arm up, trying to pull themselves up, when if you bring your arm down to bring others up with you. When I've done that in my life, my relationships are a lot more healthy and pure, and I'm a lot happier, because like I would say I'm more of an extrovert, so like I go off of people's energy a lot, and like I'm the happiest when I'm around very like-minded people who are just killing it, winning in life, and like inspiring me to do stuff. And so that's always like the end goal, but sometimes it's hard to get there just because of like maybe we're socially anxious or like we don't know like how to have conversations with people. But I think it's always important to like try to like find that group, because it can be life-changing personally.
Yeah. As far as advice goes, just for kids going into college, I think 99% of people are very, very willing to extend the hand, like you guys were saying, the 33%. And I think it's super beneficial to look up to people who are older and say, hey, what would you recommend? Just ask for advice. It's as simple as that. Like the door won't open unless you knock. And I think people are always, wanting to help out, wanting to extend their hand and make it easy on you because they were in your shoes just yesterday.
I know we're talking a lot about like relationships with friends and professionally and everything, but what about like with roommates? Because I know that's a really big part of college life. So what do you guys have to say for that?
So if there is no connection, because I'm sure that happens a lot, it's happened to me, make sure that you're still cordial in meaning like speaking, you're being respectful to each other. If it's just you being respectful and you're not getting it back, just make sure you're still cordial, you're being respectful to them, and you're giving them their space, and you're also making sure that it's not affecting you mentally, socially, or whatnot, because that can happen, and sometimes they might start some gossip or some drama or something like that because they're very close to you and they can somewhat see what you're doing and what you have going on in your life. So definitely make sure that you're not perpetuating something that you don't want to backfire on you. Make sure you're cordial, make sure you're friendly, make sure that you're at least trying to be respectful.
Roommates are tough.
It's so hard.
I moved in with, I thought, my best friend.
Same.
Until we were roommates.
Yeah,
Same.
yeah,
Like,
you always
like
learn when
it's
you move
like
in.
You can be best
Same.
friends with someone, and then the moment you live with them, entirely different person.
Yep. That's
So
exactly
like
what happened.
the reality is, it's like you can't make a situation perfect. So like I had to move out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
She moved out.
Yeah.
Yeah. she moved out.
She kicked her out.
No, she left.
I think like, again, this is easier said than done, but I think the mindset of like always doing your part, right? Like,
Exactly.
Like he was getting, I just say his name now, but like it was like there was a lot of things just with like cleanliness and things like that, and it's like as long as like you do your part, and if everyone can adopt that mindset, which is obviously what like that's the hardest thing to do, but if everyone could do that, then I feel like that's when like things run smoothly. It's compromise. It's sometimes doing something that you don't want to do for the other person, but again, there's fine lines with everything. You can't just like do it for them. So it's like, I think communication too is huge. Like sitting down, having like roommate talks, like, hey, let's talk about these, set goals together. It's like just a relationship too with roommates. It's like figuring out like your goals and how you guys can meet in the middle and work together.
Yeah, I've had that too. I've had a lot of roommates, and at some point before starting to live together, we would sit down, and super awkward, right, to get that conversation started. But because we were able to set some expectations of what we preferred, what we didn't when it came to living together, and how we're going to split chores and the fridge, just little things like that, that helped in the long run. So you kind of got to put yourself out there, maybe initiate that starting off.
Yeah, and you never know what's gonna happen, honestly, when you do that beforehand. Because I actually did that with my future suite mates or housemates or whatnot, and one actually ended up being from North Carolina, like me, and apparently we're long lost cousins. So I mean, you don't find that out until you have that kind of sit down talk and whatnot. But that was definitely interesting for me.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's really hard. You go from like most people go from not having a roommate to being in a very small confined space with a range of experiences between the two of you, and a really large transition stage, and everyone's trying to figure out where they belong and who they fit in with and what they want to do. There's a lot of stress on that, and then putting two people who don't know each other in the same space and asking them to share. It's extremely difficult, and I think there needs to be a lot of conversations about space and about boundaries and about what you care to have happen in the space and what you don't. And I do think that there also has to be like a little bit of forgiveness. Like there's definitely like if your roommate comes in every day screaming at you, like that's a problem. But if they have like one bad day where they snapped, you know, for a moment once a month or something, it clearly was the roughest day in class, or something happened at their job, or their internship just fired them or something. So like you do have to have a little bit of mindset about that, but you also, I don't know, there's a line. You have to know what your boundaries and your limits are and what you're willing to put up with and what you're not, and state that beforehand before things start happening.
Yeah, and speaking of boundaries, I had a really bad fallout with one of my roommates. She cussed me out. She locked the deadbolt lock so I couldn't even get into my own apartment and all that. She did that several times. And so I've always been a people pleaser. I've always been over accommodating, for very considerate of everyone. And so one of the things that she told me was that I was inconsiderate of her. She wanted me to go above and beyond of what I was already doing. And so after experiencing that, I'm honestly glad that I did, because it helped me to be less of a people pleaser, to be more willing to speak up for myself and to advocate for myself. So I'm glad that she didn't treat me well, because that was something that I really needed to just grow as a person.
So I'm curious, how many people here went out of state for school? Like left homes? Okay.
I mean, just recently.
Okay. So like,
school.
I think there's a lot of people in your guys' boats where like they're leaving home literally to a whole new place. And like, that's so scary. So I'm curious to your thoughts. Like, what did you guys, like, how was that experience? And what would you have like done differently maybe going into it? Or if anyone's listening who's like in the same boat, like what advice do you guys have for them who are just starting anew?
Like, know yourself, and like definitely don't push yourself too fast if you're not ready for it. I feel like I definitely like threw myself in the deep end because I was like, school, orientation, all these events, blah, blah, blah. I got so overwhelmed because I'm from suburbs, and I moved into Boston. So it was like learning the city, learning the people of the city, learning new classes, having new people. Like every single aspect of my life has changed. And then being alone on top of it. And during COVID. So it definitely, if you feel like you need stepping stones, like today I'm just going to go on the Green Line, 3 stops, and come back. And then that's it. I'm going to sit in the dorm room for the rest of the day. Like, take breaks for yourself and be able to, like, don't overwhelm yourself, but definitely, like, it's a whole new experience, and it's going to take a while to get acclimated. So don't be scared within the first week when you see people, like, running around all over Fenway and all over the Boston Garden, Public Garden and Common, and taking photos, and you're like, wow, they seem like they belong here, and I don't, and it's just like, no, they're just faking it. They're just pretending that they do, and they feel just as imposter-y as you do. Mm-hmm. They're just better at hiding it.
Any like advice on like just like how to maybe like meet people, or like how to
events, definitely.
Events, is that what you did a lot?
I did a lot of events, and a lot of in terms of like, there was a lot of like group chats of like class of 24, or like girls of Emerson, or like people who wanted to play D&D, or like stuff like that. So you would just find like niche groups, and then org fairs are like the first weeks usually. Go to the org fair, see if there's anything that you're interested in. It's intimidating. It's scary. They're definitely, everyone's sitting there with flyers, throwing them at your face and being like, scan this QR code, give me your email. Like it's scary, but you might find one or two things that feel comforting to something that you did in your past, whether it be like photography or dance or something. And you will find people who are like you, who have similar interests than you.
Yeah, I would say if you have the opportunity to go out of state, 1000% take it, because it's probably the best way to grow. I think going out of state, you also need to take a little bit of a piece of home with you. So like for me in California, I love hiking. And obviously in Boston, it's not as mountainous, but there's still a few trails to find, and just take that with you and take that time for yourself. But also as far as meeting people, I don't think it's that weird to be the person who's like, hey, yo, are you blank blank from social media? Like if you have a Facebook group chat or whatever before school. And I think if it's the right person, like they'll reciprocate that and they'll want to be friends with you as well. So definitely like going outside your comfort zone, and obviously that's not a normal thing that everyone's used to doing, but it's a good way to meet people.
Yeah, and I'd say during that kind of before that time period where you do make those connections, I would say tap into your connections at home. Maybe just talk to them every other day or whenever you're feeling lonely, so you have that connection. They're kind of feeding into you like the positives, and you're not losing like your sociable side, I guess, because after like a long hiatus of not speaking to people, or like after COVID when people were like all by themselves, like at home, not doing anything, some people, but it's just like you need to kind of keep your sociable side in check, because if you kind of take too much of a long break, it's like you lose that phase, if that makes sense. So definitely tap into your connections at home to keep those connections, but also keep you grounded, so then you can make new connections and be able to step out of your comfort zone and say, hey, how are you doing? You're in my econ class. I think we should hang out sometime.
So for people who are like wrapping up college or in grad school, things like that, how would you say you can like nurture these relationships? How can you make them lasting? What are your thoughts on that?
Kind of going back, since I'm kind of a first year in grad school, you definitely have to make sure that those connections that are very, very genuine, say your friend ended up moving to St. Louis after they graduated, or your best friend moved abroad, God forbid. You have to make sure that you keep in touch with them, text them every now and then, make sure that they know that that connection is still there. And in terms of professional connections, definitely if you met a professional connection at a career fair or just in happenstance, make sure that you're keeping that connection alive so they can remember you, like, oh, that's Jacob. Oh, I remember seeing him. So there's that, and they can go to you if they need someone with your expertise, and they can help you gain those expertise by saying, oh, there's an internship coming up. If you're a senior or lower classman, they can still kind of help build you up, and then they could potentially become your employer.
So for me, I created a spreadsheet of all the contacts I've made. So I'll have like a separate row for their name, where I met them, what day that was, and so forth. And then also I have like scheduled email set up of where, like, let's say I emailed this person months ago, but I also want to follow up with them. Like that scheduled email will send out saying, hey, just checking up on you. Want to set up a brief call so we could discuss whatever it may be. And then that has really helped me with securing like more brand partnerships or more opportunities for speaking engagements and so forth. So using technology to stay on top of your connections, and not just being dependent on social media, because I have like a lot of followers on social media, so it can be very confusing navigating who is who. So that's why it's really important that I have this organized on a spreadsheet.
Yeah, honestly. So with the professional connections, keeping those alive. So after the career fair, maybe the next day or a couple hours after it's over, contact the most valuable connections that you've made. ask something simple like, "Oh, do you want to get a coffee sometime?" Or maybe if that connection is kind of so I wouldn't ask anybody if they would want to get coffee sometime, but if you feel like it was a genuine connection, they're potentially like you really see yourself working for them, definitely ask. I mean, a no is okay. I mean, it could be a yes the next time, but definitely try to make sure that you're keeping that connection alive and eventually meet them again. So
I think
they
for
remember
me,
you.
like as I've gotten older, it went from like how many people can I like how many friends can I have or how many people can I meet to who I want in my life. Because relationships are a commitment and they're draining sometimes. And so I think like especially like once you're done with college or like you're just moving on in life, it's really asking yourself the deep questions of like, is this person like a good fit for me in my life? For me personally, it's is this person helping me be the best person that I can become? And I ask myself, I'm like, am I doing that for them as well? So I think it's really important to like ask yourself those questions, and then once you figure that out, it's just it takes two to tango. So you have to really like put in the effort, and if they have to reciprocate, kind of like what you're saying. I have a lot of friends who like some are out of state. We're all busy, so it's not like an everyday hangout, but sometimes it's like a phone call, just like, hey, like, how's it going? Sometimes just following up and getting updates is huge. Sometimes it's, hey, like, let's get lunch real quick. But usually it's not like I'm seeing these people all the time because, like, as you move on in life, you get busier. But it's like you could still put in like those little pieces of effort to keep that relationship going.
Because you get so post grad, you get so tied up with new aspects of life, like supporting yourself financially, long-term relationships. Like I just got married too, and it's important to make sure, even with all these things going on, still don't overvalue your time. Sometimes our generation's mindset is to like be independent, strong, no one's gonna help you but yourself. But sometimes you just gotta, like you talked about, like just plan time to call a friend, plan time to have a dinner with the buds, and just remember that your time's important, yes, but if you want to stay connected with people and not get caught up in the rat race, you have to look outside of yourself.
I feel like a lot of people are outcome oriented too much, like with relationships. Like people are like, I'm gonna be in like a relationship when like I'm here, and I feel like that's so toxic. Like yes, there's like a good, like yes, you want to make sure you like you know yourself and you're ready, but I feel like sometimes you just gotta go for it in the moment if you have the opportunity in any sort of relationship. But yeah, I wouldn't wait too long on things. So thank you guys for listening to this amazing conversation. Don't forget to subscribe for all things Campus Underground, and we'll see you next time.